The night was unusually cold for early June in northern Michigan. Pines swayed in the breeze along the shores of Lake Stillwater, their shadows dancing across 4 sleeping bags arranged around the dying embers of a campfire. Sarah Miller, Dean Thompson, Ellie Parker, and Jason Collins had graduated from Lakeside High just 3 days earlier. This camping trip was meant to be their celebration before college scattered them across the country. The fire crackled as Jason tossed another log onto the flames. "They say this place is haunted," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not this again," Sarah groaned, pulling her jacket tighter. Her blonde hair caught the firelight as she shook her head. "Every small town has stories. But there's something about this one," Jason insisted. 3 campers were found dead here back in '79. The 4th survived with a cracked skull and no memory of what happened. Dean leaned forward, his athletic frame casting a long shadow. "My dad told me about that. The survivor was a local guy, right? They never found who did it." "They say he did it himself," Ellie added, her dark eyes reflecting the flames. "Made it look like an attack." "Why would anyone do that to their friends?" Sarah asked. "People do crazy things," Dean replied. "Sometimes for no reason at all." The 4 friends fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts as the fire died down. None of them knew these would be their last hours together. By morning, 3 would be dead, and 1 would become the center of a mystery that would haunt Pine Creek, Michigan for decades. Detective Marcus Reed stood at the edge of the crime scene, his weathered face grim as he surveyed the campsite. 25 years on the force hadn't prepared him for the brutality before him. 3 bodies lay where they had fallen, Sarah Miller and Ellie Parker in their sleeping bags, Dean Thompson a few feet away, likely having tried to run. Blood had soaked into the forest floor, turning the pine needles a deep crimson. "What do we have?" Reed asked, though he already knew the answer. Officer Jenkins, fresh-faced and pale, flipped open his notebook. 3 victims, all 18 years old. Multiple stab wounds. The 4th teenager, Jason Collins, was found half a mile away with severe head trauma but still alive. He's at County General now. Reed crouched beside one of the bodies, noting the savage nature of the wounds. "Weapon? Me says something with a blade, but not your typical hunting knife. The wounds are unusual, wide at one end, narrower at the other. Almost like an axe," Reed finished, standing up. "Time of death? Between 2 and 4 a.m. according to liver temperature." First responders got the call at 6:15 from a fisherman who spotted Collins stumbling along the shoreline. Reed looked out at the lake, its surface shimmering in the morning sun. Such a peaceful setting for such a violent end. Any signs of robbery? Sexual assault? Nothing obvious. Their wallets and phones were untouched. The girls' clothes weren't disturbed. "So we have a killer who attacks 4 teenagers in the middle of the night, doesn't take anything, and leaves one alive." Reed shook his head. "This doesn't feel random, Jenkins. You thinking someone they knew? Maybe. Or maybe someone who knew they'd be here." Reed started toward his car. "I want to talk to the survivor as soon as he's able." "That might be a while, sir. Doctors say he has a severe concussion and memory loss." Reed paused. "Memory loss? Convenient. You don't think?" "I think everyone's a suspect until proven otherwise. Even the lone survivor." 3 days passed before Jason Collins was conscious enough to speak. Reed sat beside his hospital bed, taking in the teenager's battered face and bandaged head. "Jason, I'm Detective Reed. I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you about what happened at Lake Stillwater." Jason's eyes were unfocused, his voice barely audible. "I can't remember." "Try. Anything could help us find who did this to your friends." Tears welled in Jason's eyes. "We were just camping. Celebrating graduation. I remember the fire, telling ghost stories, then nothing. Just flashes. A shadow. Sarah screaming. Then waking up here. Did you see anyone else at the lake? Anyone following you? Jason closed his eyes, wincing. No. Just us. Were there any conflicts in your group? Any reason someone would want to hurt you? We were friends since elementary school, Jason whispered. Everyone loved Sarah. Dean was going to Michigan State on a football scholarship. Ellie had just been accepted to pre-med at Johns Hopkins. Why would anyone do this? Reed watched Jason carefully. The boy's grief seemed genuine, but something didn't add up. Jason, where were you planning to go after summer? A flicker of something, resentment, crossed Jason's face. Community college. I didn't get the scholarships like they did. Reed made a note. One more question. The weapon used was likely an axe. Did you bring one to the campsite? Jason hesitated. For firewood. It should have been by the tent. We didn't find it at the scene. Jason's eyes widened. You think the killer took our axe? Or brought their own, Reed replied, watching Jason's reaction. We'll talk again when you're feeling better. In the weeks that followed, Pine Creek transformed from a quiet vacation town to the center of a media frenzy. The Lake Stillwater murders, as they were now called, dominated every local news outlet. Reed worked the case tirelessly, but leads were scarce. The investigation revealed nothing suspicious in the victims' backgrounds. Sarah, Dean, and Ellie were well-liked, high-achieving students with bright futures. None had enemies or connections to drugs or criminal activity. Their families were devastated, demanding answers Reed couldn't provide. Then came the letter. It arrived at the police station a month after the murders, typed on plain paper with no return address. The lake demands sacrifice. 4 went in. 1 came out. The cycle continues. Forensics found no fingerprints, no DNA. The paper and ink were common brands available at any office supply store. The postmark showed it had been mailed from Traverse City, 50 miles away. What do you make of this? Reed asked Dr. Eleanor Winters, the department's consulting psychologist, sliding the letter across her desk. Dr. Winters studied it through narrow glasses. Interesting choice of words. The cycle continues suggests this isn't the first time. The killer may be connecting these murders to something in the past. Like the 79 killings Jason mentioned. Possibly. Or it could be a way to mislead you, making a simple murder appear part of something larger, more mysterious. Reed frowned. You think this is a distraction? I think you should look closer at the survivor, Dr. Winters said carefully. Memory loss can be legitimate after trauma, but it can also be convenient. We've checked his story. There were no weapons found on him, no blood on his clothes beyond his own. The lake was right there. Perfect for washing away evidence. Reed had considered this, of course. But something about Jason's grief felt real. We need more than suspicion to charge a kid who just lost all his friends. Then find more, Dr. Winters replied. Because right now, he's either your only witness or your killer. The breakthrough came unexpectedly from Pine Creek's archives. Reed had been digging through old case files, looking for connections to the 1979 murders Jason had mentioned. What he found instead was a newspaper article from 1942. 3 dead, 1 survivor in Lakeside tragedy. Local teenagers found brutally attacked while camping at Lake Stillwater. Sole survivor claims no memory of the incident. Then another from 1904. Mysterious killing at the lake. 3 young people slain while sleeping under the stars. 4th victim survived with serious injuries but cannot recall the attack. Reed stared at the yellowed papers, a chill running down his spine. The pattern was undeniable, roughly every 37 to 38 years, the same scenario, 4 teenagers camping, 3 killed, 1 survivor with memory loss. "This changes everything," he muttered. The next day, Reed drove to a nursing home on the outskirts of town. Harold Kinsey, now 93, had been the sole survivor of the 1942 killings. If he was still lucid, he might be the only person who could shed light on the cycle of violence. Kinsey sat in a wheelchair by the window, his thin frame hunched but his eyes alert. When Reed explained why he'd come, the old man's hands began to tremble. "I've been waiting," Kinsey said, his voice surprisingly strong. "Waiting for someone to make the connection. I saw the news about those poor kids. History repeating itself. Mr. Kinsey, what happened in 1942? The real story, not what you told the police." The old man's eyes clouded. "We were just having fun. Me, Betty, Frank, and Doris. Then I woke up to screaming. There was something moving around our campsite. I tried to run, got hit in the head. When I came to, they were all dead." "Did you see who did it?" Kinsey leaned forward. "It wasn't a who, detective. It was the lake." Reed tried to hide his disappointment. The old man's mind was gone after all. "The lake killed your friends?" "You think I'm crazy," Kinsey chuckled. "I would too. But the lake, it needs sacrifice. Every 4 decades or so. The native people knew, they avoided that place. The settlers didn't listen. Mr. Kinsey. The survivor always has the same dream," Kinsey continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Water filling their lungs. 3 bodies floating beneath the surface. A voice saying, 'You've been spared to continue the cycle.'" Reed felt a chill. "Has Jason Collins mentioned any dreams?" "Ask him," Kinsey replied. "But be careful. The lake chose him for a reason." Reed found Jason Collins sitting alone by the town's memorial to the murder victims. The teenager looked up as Reed approached, his face paler and thinner than when they'd last spoken. "Detective," Jason nodded. "Any progress?" "Maybe," Reed sat beside him. "Jason, have you been having dreams since the attack?" "About the lake, maybe." Jason's eyes widened fractionally before he controlled his expression. "Just nightmares. Normal after what happened, right?" Harold Kinsey survived a similar attack in 1942. He mentioned specific dreams the survivor experiences. Jason stood abruptly. "I don't know what you're talking about." 3 bodies under the water, Reed continued. "A voice telling you you've been spared to continue the cycle." Jason's face drained of color. "How could you know that?" "I never told anyone." "So you have had the dream?" "It doesn't mean anything," Jason insisted. "Trauma does weird things to people." Reed watched him carefully. "The killings happen every 38 years, Jason. 1904, 1942, 1979, and now. Always the same pattern. You think I'm part of some cycle? That's insane." "Is it?" "The weapon was never found. Your injuries were serious but not as severe as they could have been. And now you're having the same dreams as previous survivors." Jason's voice shook. "I didn't kill my friends." "Maybe not consciously," Reed said quietly. "But something happened that night. Something you're not telling me." "I think I want a lawyer now," Jason whispered. Reed nodded, standing. "That's your right. But Jason? This won't end with you. If the pattern holds, it'll happen again in 38 years. Unless we break the cycle." 2 years later, the case remained officially unsolved. Jason Collins had been arrested and charged with the murders based on circumstantial evidence, the missing axe, inconsistencies in his story, and a series of journal entries found in his room that suggested growing resentment toward his more successful friends. But the charges were eventually dropped due to lack of definitive proof. Reed sat at his desk, staring at the case file he couldn't bring himself to close. Scientific investigation had revealed nothing supernatural about Lake Stillwater. Its waters were ordinary, its history documented only through local legends and the concrete evidence of periodic killings. The phone on his desk rang, startling him from his thoughts. "Detective Reed?" "This is Sandra Collins, Jason's mother." Reed straightened. "Mrs. Collins. What can I do for you?" Her voice trembled. "Jason's gone. Left a note saying he's going back to the lake. That he can't fight it anymore." Reed was already grabbing his keys. "When?" "I found the note an hour ago. He could already be there." "I'll find him, Mrs. Collins." Reed drove faster than was safe along the winding road to Lake Stillwater. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the water. As he parked and ran toward the shore, he spotted a figure standing knee-deep in the lake, Jason Collins, staring into the darkening water. "Jason!" Reed called, splashing into the shallows. "Step back from the water." Jason turned, his eyes distant. "You were right, detective. About everything. The dreams got worse. Every night, I see them under the water, calling me to join them. And I hear the voice." "You don't have to do this," Reed said, approaching slowly. "Whatever happened that night, whatever you did or didn't do, we can figure it out." "That's just it," Jason replied. "I remember now. All of it. I woke up and saw someone standing over Sarah with an axe. But it wasn't a stranger. It was me. I was watching myself kill my friends, like I was outside my own body." Reed was close enough now to grab him if needed. "Jason, come back to shore. We'll get you help." "There is no help," Jason whispered. Harold Kinsey knew. He tried to warn others, but no one believed him. "The cycle has to continue." "What cycle? What are you talking about?" Jason's eyes cleared momentarily. "The first survivor made a deal with something in the lake. His life spared in exchange for bringing new sacrifices every 4 decades. Each survivor becomes the next killer, continuing the cycle." "That's not possible," Reed insisted. "I thought so too." Jason smiled sadly. "But I can feel it inside me now. Growing stronger. If I live, in 38 years I'll be compelled to bring 4 more teenagers here. And kill 3 of them." Before Reed could reach him, Jason plunged deeper into the lake. Reed lunged forward, grabbing for Jason's shirt, but his fingers closed on empty air. The water swallowed Jason with barely a ripple, as if welcoming him home. Despite an extensive search, Jason Collins' body was never recovered from Lake Stillwater. The case was officially closed, with Jason posthumously considered the likely perpetrator of the original murders. But Detective Marcus Reed couldn't shake the conversation by the lake. He devoted his personal time to researching similar patterns across the country. For teenagers, 3 deaths, 1 survivor with memory loss, recurring every few decades. He found 6 potential matches, stretching back almost 2 centuries. At night, Reed dreamed of dark water and floating bodies. And sometimes, just before waking, he heard a voice: "The cycle continues." In 2043, exactly 38 years after the Lake Stillwater murders, Reed, now retired, read about 4 teenagers camping at the lake. The next morning, 3 were found dead. The 4th, a girl named Emily Watson, survived with a head injury and no memory of the attack. Reed drove to the hospital, determined to talk to her before the dreams began. As he approached her room, he rehearsed what to say, how to convince her of what might be happening. But when he saw her sitting up in bed, staring out the window toward the lake, he hesitated. Because for just a moment, in the reflection of the glass, he thought he saw not Emily's face, but Jason's, watching, waiting for the cycle to begin again.